Energy, 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 energy! C.A. Purcell, Gumbolaya Podcast, the second edition, second interview with Jessica Massa.
Praise and production.
Writer, content producer, brief psychologist, and brief archaeologist, and brief, no?
Great. No, you're killing it. I'm taking my head at my own professional history, not at your retelling.
I want to know them
yeah.
all, though. That's what's so interesting to me about you. You can I drop the H-bomb?
Sure.
Yeah, the Harvardin.
No problem.
She's a Harvardin. They have the list, so many things, and they do well at all of them. So I'm gonna rehearse the list. Writer, video and content producer. What did you do in the area of psychology? I know that's your degree, but
yeah, I was doing research psychology.
Psychology.
Yeah.
What area of research? What were you working on?
Mostly social psychology was generally what I was interested in.
Yeah.
So less of clinical, kind of one-to-one, more what are the ways in which you could put almost any human in a certain situation and then everyone will sort of act the same.
I
so that's my area of interest.
That's a big one why I'm always fascinated when we talk. Because every class I had that dealt with sociology, psychology, some type of how people think and interact, I enjoyed it so much.
Mm-hmm.
The different media studies classes I took, whatever, I loved them. But I love music so much more. You know what I mean? I felt the passion in the moment, and then I had to get back to class and to practice, or you know what I mean? I get back to sessions or whatever. But it was always fun. There was a doctor, there's been several, but there are two professors at Cal State LA that I want to try and remember to invite them over. One is a man named Dr. Fraser. He teaches taught, I don't know if he's still there, a sociology class. And he talked a lot about how our understanding of the world can be shaped significantly differently depending on how we were encouraged and supported in our playtime as kids. You know, obviously our foundational thinking comes from childhood, but he went into examples of like how this can happen, which will lead to a person dealing with this. And that's the part that's fascinating to me, learning the connection. Like I get if somebody goes through trauma when they're a kid, they're going to struggle with, that's obvious. But why? Like, what is it about this thing that causes that thing? It was fascinating. I didn't engage on my own. So when I'm in a class and somebody's just kind of pouring this stuff out, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. So here's one of the big ones that I thought was amazing. Because you talked a lot about dating, and I'm sorry I cut you off. I'm just realizing you didn't finish what you said. I'm sorry. But you talked about dating a lot. You said you did like several years working specifically on it. Was this for BuzzFeed?
No, this was for a book I wrote that came out in 2012.
I forgot the name of it. I totally did my research, but I'm blanking right now.
No, all good. It's called The Gaggle,
Yes.
How to Find Love in the Post-Dating World.
There it is. Let us talk the most about that if you feel like it. So he gave this analogy. I had never heard it before, and it blew my mind. He talked about how, number one, young males and young females are encouraged to play differently. How young females are encouraged to play cooperatively and whatnot, to work together. And there's usually not winners and losers necessarily. Little girls. And little boys are taught to play competitively, and everything's based off of hierarchy versus young girls. A lot of the stuff that they're kind of, go play this, or here, I bought you this, encouragement. They're encouraged to play things that everybody's kind of equal in the game or in the situation versus young boys. It's based off a hierarchy. Who's the captain? Who's going to do this or whatever? And everything is competitive or whatnot. And then he talked about how that kind of translates into how we relate to each other. But also he talked about what people do in dating. And I never heard this before. I thought it was interesting. So he drew some stick figures on the board, and he drew a line above their head. And he said, this is you. This is you for real, right? He said, what we do when we date is We put on stuff that makes us feel above that line. We rehearse behaviors and language that make us feel above that line. We select the things that we're going to share and talk about and kind of, predetermined responses to, give our resume version of ourselves, right? Lift us up above that line. And so you show up to the date with this inflated, heightened sense of self that you want this other person to see as the real you, right? And so you go on the date. This person is getting to know the hyper version of you. You're getting to know the hyper version of them, right?
What Chris Rock calls your representative, right?
Your representative, yes, yeah. Exactly. Mm-hmm. That was a great bit. The representative. Mm-hmm. And, so you go through the date or the relationship, and when things don't work out, you take from that failure of a connection to equate to these things don't either translate or I am not what I thought I was that I'm giving out. You know what I mean? I'm sure there's other takeaways, but for the purposes of the example, that's what he's talking about. He was like, so it makes you feel under the line, not at, right? And I was like, oh, that makes sense. You go out, you open yourself up, and somebody says, nah, I'm cool. I don't want you in my life, if somebody will tell the truth. He says, so then you find another date. And then you do more of that because they didn't get what I wanted to show. They didn't get that hyper sense of self that I wanted to sell. So I got to do a better job at showing, right? He was like, so you buy an even nicer hat and you buy a nicer tie and, right? You clean your car up even more. And you know what I'm saying? And the ladies do whatever different with how they present themselves. And so you go out with yourself times 2 again. And so eventually you start to kind of feel that on and off presentation of self. And it starts to blur and affect your understanding of the line that you started with. And what was cool to me is I was a bit older when I took that class. So I'm in class with 19, 20-year-olds, right? College kids. And I'm seeing them barely pay attention. And I'm like, oh my God, this will save you so much heartache. It'll save you so much emotional damage when you understand how to be clear on who you are and present who you are in a way that says, I hope you like me because I like you, but if you don't, I'm okay. That's a hard place to get to. And I'm like, this dude is giving you a great way to access the fast lane for that. And
that's shocking to me too, just because in my experience with college age people and all people, but if there's like a dating tip on the table, they're like, excuse me. Like
that's what I
all
was
my
saying.
Psychology classes, if there was just sometimes there would be a learning, like I remember in our social psychology class, our professor said, look, sometimes we confuse certain types of arousal for attraction. So, there's the studies that, if you go on a date to, a place where you're going to go on a roller coaster, or you have, I think the thing is people are crossing a very dangerous bridge and they're then rating the attractiveness of someone they bump into versus in the control group, I think they were bumping into that same person just on a street. And the people on the bridge rated them as way more attractive because your body gets aroused by the danger that you're in or the roller coaster, by the adrenaline. And your body doesn't know, am I like aroused because I feel like I'm going to die or because this person's really hot? And so your body goes, I guess I think they're really hot. To me, it's always why on the Bachelor franchise, anytime they really want to give a contestant like a good shot, they send them on a bungee jumping date because those people will connect in a way more intense way. All that to say, I remember this was maybe 3 minutes of an entire college course and all of us were like, writing, we're just like, okay, go on a date to a roller coaster. So I'm just surprised that the college kids
I was very shocked. By that point though, I'd had several situations where I kind of saw that I'm in a different place in my head than they were. I even remember a moment in a speech and writing class where this professor, she was a very nice lady. Like she and I got along very well. I enjoyed taking the class because she was just an interesting thinker. And she's a writer. So a lot of what she was teaching was how to do a better job than normal at expressing your thoughts and feelings creatively in print or in writing. And so the creative part of me really connected with that because it's hard to explain to people there is a difference between doing something and doing it creatively. You got to look for the special part. You got to look for the shine. Just doing it is a good thing. But if you're trying to present an alternative view or something, you got to figure out what's the stark difference in what is normal and understood, or what do you think is special enough to warrant attention on this? And so she took some time, one class, and she was talking to everybody about the difference between succeeding in school in general or just in learning something. And she stopped the class and she was talking to everybody. And her big point was take notes and stay focused. Simple points, but right, how much time did I waste when I was young? Because I just didn't care. I wanted to get back to band. That's all I cared about. I want to go hang out with my friends and I want to go back to band. I don't care about this political science class. Like, tell me what I got to do to pass the test. I'm out. But she was talking to them and I remember looking around and I'm like, y'all are going to be failing classes simply because you don't take notes. And I got both sides of that because I was not a great student when I was young because my goal was a C and get out of the class. I don't want to fail because that's embarrassing. I don't want to fail, but I don't want to have to do anything more than I need to pass this class and get back to band. So anyways, when I took the sociology class, I was kind of used to being in that environment where I could see the young ones were, they're not at a point where they can understand why what you're being spoon-fed is so valuable. They don't get it. Again, I had to let it go. But in that sociology class, like we talked a lot about how do I lump it in together? Well, you know what sociology is. So totally. For me, again, because it's a fascinating subject, almost everything we talked about was amazingly interesting. He even talked about the advantage and problem with capitalism. And Kelly and I went deep into a couple episodes ago, because we see a lot of that similarly and we see a lot of it differently. But he gave the analogy of a babysitter. And he talked about, he's like, okay, I got kids. I need a babysitter. I'm going to hire a babysitter at $1,000 a night. Who's interested? Everybody's hand goes up, right? And then he says, okay, so I have all these options. So now to choose, I'm going to offer $500 a night. Who's still interested? Some people's hands, right? And he goes all the way down to where he's like, okay, I'll pay $50 a night. And eventually, like one person's hand was still up. He's like, okay, you're hired. And that is a very, very simple way of explaining the advantage and the problem with capitalism, because the person now is doing a job that could have been worth $1,000 for $50 simply because they want the $50. And the person offering the job, there is no mention of how much the job is worth. It's just who's willing to do it. And so for you, what turned the lights on in that area of interest for you to study it at a collegiate level? Like where'd you get bitten by that bug?
Sure. I mean, it's funny too. I'm so glad that you're dipping into it, whatever phase of life you realize you're fascinated by. Because I also think that's great. Like I think that I feel like life will be very long and kind of boring if we're not finding new things we're passionate about. So it's like even those kids who aren't paying attention now, maybe in 3 years, they'll have the epiphany and they'll start watching Coursera stuff. So I'm like, whenever we get excited about stuff, it's like the right time to get excited about it. So I love that for you too. And I hope that until I'm gone, I keep finding some new area that I'm like, how have I not been, like, I never paid attention to this before, but now it's all I want to learn about. Like, I love that, I think. And that's what keeps other people interesting. You know, people for 20, 30, 50 years, if nobody's learning anything new, what are you going to talk about anymore?
Doing?
Then you're that couple who's sitting on your phones because, like, we have nothing to say to each other, you know.
That.
But
I don't think that's going to be me, though.
No, I don't think me either.
I
think we'll both be fine with that.
I can go.
Yeah. But I think, I mean, on the one hand, I just got really lucky. Like, I went to college. I didn't know what I was going to study. One of the things I tried. Oh, that wasn't your
decision pre-college?
I don't know. I think in general, I'm not a big long-term thinker. Something in some ways I think I'm working on, in other ways I think I don't really want to get more focus on long-term things. So I never really.
We are very alike, and it's interesting to kind of see why our conversations feel different, because that's how. And it's a struggle for me because there's a certain amount of responsibility that I'm not going to speak for you, that I feel in the need to think long-term, the need to plant seed for a crop. But at the same time, I also have just seen so much stress that people carry because they don't give themselves a moment to be like, I don't need to figure out retirement completely yet. Like, maybe spend some time thinking about it, but that's, you know.
Also, I've been watching this Netflix show about blue zones and reading those books, and none of the people who are living to 110 in Costa Rica and Sardinia and Japan are retiring. Like, this idea that my dad says all the time, he worked sanitation in the South Bronx for 20 years and he retired, and then he had a second career, but he always said he'd see guys spend their whole lives working towards retirement, and then they'd retire, and then they'd drop dead in a couple months. Like, so for me, I think retirement, or some version of life where I'm not working or I'm just doing recreational things and relaxing, has never been something I've looked forward to or cared. And also, I get so excited about things. The idea, like, maybe I'll just play golf all day has seemed very unlikely. So I think that, for me, that I think there's a lot of privilege baked into the ability to not be a long-term thinker. Like, and for me, part of that is like, obviously, as a white woman, as a cis woman, as a straight woman, but even just coming from two incredibly loving parents and having like a house full of unconditional love. Like, I think that I had this idea, or like somewhere deep in my soul believe that I will be okay. And if I'm like a good person who follows things that are interesting to me and ideally help other people in some way, that like opportunity will happen. So if I had the thought process, which I think a lot of my friends who think long-term are like, well, if I don't plan, bad things will happen or nothing will happen. And I just have some very privileged core belief in me that like things will work out. Like, it doesn't mean I'm going to sit on the couch and wait for things to work out. But so I think, again, there's a lot of privilege, but also I think you can choose to say, like, I don't have to overplan for life, because also the times I have overplanned, it's very LOL. Like, it has never worked out like I thought it would. So I think for me, I'm just always trying to move towards my curiosities and the places where I'm realizing there might be some impact. Like at the college choir where Kelly and I met, you know, the thing we said all the time was our goal was to leave spaces better than we found them. So I think that has stuck in my head so much. And there are things I get really curious about. And I'm always just kind of like, as long as I have those two things in mind, like who cares where I land? So I think all that to say, no, I did not go into college planning a certain major. I didn't, because the H-bomb was dropped, I didn't spend my whole childhood striving to go to Harvard. Obviously, I loved school. I was not, I also very much looked forward to band every day. I was like a band nerd, and music was what
What'd
I did.
You play? I didn't know that.
I played clarinet.
Hey!
First clarinet for a couple of years, went to band camp, all state, like did the like clarinet, you know.
All of this? Oh.
You know, just thought,
I get it.
Never thought I'd do it professionally. Just like, I thought it was so
I didn't know you were a
fun.
band nerd.
I was AP music.
I don't hear the phrase Allstate come from a lot of people that weren't, but like, you got to be a band nerd.
Area Allstate. I don't know what that is. But no, I mean, my friends were band nerds, and we were in theater after school. And my best friends from high school still, we go on vacation every year. We were in a singing group called Thursday's Child, like an a cappella group. So, and like I said, all my babysitting money went to concerts. So I loved music and the arts always, but I also loved like AP government. I also loved French. Like I just did. Like
so you hit college with a love of music. I guess, so when was the flip? So, you get to school, you're taking a lot of core stuff, which I imagine at Harvard would be just insanely difficult, the coursework, even at the beginning levels of your, whatever direction you're going to go in. But I guess what flipped the switch? What made you feel like, I want to study more in the ologies?
I think for me, it wasn't a switch. It was very much a yes and situation. So most of my extracurricular time, which at Harvard is basically your second job. Like it's not like, I have fun and I do this thing. It's like, you've seen it through Kelly. We were like running organizations. So my free time was all with Kumba, the choir that we were in. Also, I was in Sisters, the a cappella subset. Also by my senior year, I was vice president. Like music and art was an everyday part of my life there. So that was beautiful. But I've never been anywhere near gifted enough to like think I could perform music professionally. That never crossed my mind. I did think I wanted to work in the music industry. That's probably as long-term thinking I ever got. And that's part of the LOL of like when you actually plan and then you get somewhere, often it's not what you thought it would be. So for me, I just took the intro to psych class as, something you didn't have to declare until maybe your sophomore year. I don't totally remember. But so you just got to try things. And so I was taking psychology, intro to psychology. And I just instantly loved it. Like, it's not that the work felt easy, the work felt hard, but I was so fascinated by it that it didn't feel like work. Even the paper writing, it felt like what I'd want to do with my free time. Like I was like, and I think even when I, many years later, got my master's at UPenn in applied positive psychology and was working full time, still here in LA and at BuzzFeed and staying up till 4 a.m. every night. People would ask, how are you doing this? You're not sleeping. And it's like I didn't go to any birthday parties. Or I was a terrible friend and daughter for a year, but this was like I loved doing.
Pause. Would other people say you were terrible, or is this what you've told yourself?
For that year. I think I hopefully set the expectation.
They would say terrible? Use the word terrible friend? Terrible daughter?
Hopefully not. I think they'd say not present for that year.
Okay.
I was not good about responding to people on text. I was not attending birthday parties and engagement parties. I was not, hopefully when I was seeing people, I could still be present, but even seeing people, I worked and then it was a full-time program. So I went home and I did my work and then I was flying to Philly once a month. So I think hopefully not terrible, but also because I said, I'm probably going to be really MIA, but there's going to be an end date. And I think everyone gave me some grace. But if I just been that way and continued, I think they'd be like, she's a terrible friend and daughter. Or there were definitely calls from my mom saying, I know you said you're really busy. I just need to know that you're alive. I was like, okay, we've reached a point where she's thinking maybe I'm not alive. I have to be better. But
I went through that as well. I distinctly remember in my early 20s when I was gone. I came home to sleep, not even to eat. I would come home to sleep and to bag up my dirty laundry and take it to fluff and fold or whatever. And that was about it. I wasn't home. And I remember I told you we were very sit around the table type of environment, and we had that kind of environment. And I remember a couple of conversations where my mom was just like, I would appreciate still seeing you, at least a couple times a week, if not regularly. And she was like, because there's some times where I don't see you the whole time I'm awake for a couple days. And she was like, I know you. And so the struggle for me was never wondering if I was loved or wondering about myself or if I'm being a good son or whatever. It was more so how to recognize when my behavior was unintentionally impacting someone negatively. And my mom was just a perfect person to help me learn that, because she was very good at giving like the I feel I need statements, where I could just understand without judgment how I'm affecting somebody. And you need that in order to learn before you're having to deal with someone that you care about that doesn't know how to say it.
Totally.
So my mother she would say things like, I love you and I want to see you. I miss you when you're busy for weeks and I see you at church and I'm just like, okay. She was like, so, please every now and then let me know when you're going to be home for dinner. I'll cook the stuff you like. I was like, okay, Mom. Okay, no problem. Like once she started getting into I'll cook what you like, then I felt bad. Yeah, I was like, of course. Like, that's not a big ask. No problem.
It's beautiful because she was asking you very specifically for what she wanted to, which I think is such a life skill to realize no one can mind read your mind. And so even when you are asking, when someone's asking you or when you're asking for something from someone to say, this is what it would look like for me to feel better about this is so, like, it's not just your mom.
Yeah.
Certainly wasn't just my mom going, where have you been? You're never home. Period.
Yeah.
Like she's like, can I see you? Or my mom would say, because we were across country, she would just say, can I just get a text every couple of days? You tell me you're okay, you're doing fine. And that's so helpful because then you're like, I can do that. Like, but when you just feel like someone's upset at you and you don't know how to solve it, I know sometimes I start avoiding. I go, well, like, I'm just gonna.
You don't want to have to deal with that.
Yeah.
Even worse, what I haven't learned quite yet how to explain this to someone that's doing it because it's never happened to me when I was really close to somebody. But the idea of sharing something that you're thinking and feeling without presenting it as you suck. I feel like this because you suck. Like, even though we feel like that sometimes, being able to communicate a need or a want or a feeling purely from, I care about you and so blah, 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 kind of takes so much of the sting out of someone giving you, whatever the opposite of an affirmation is. I don't know how it'd be. But for me, that was normal. And I didn't know that wasn't normal in conversation until probably like late high school, when I'm starting to talk to people like independently of school or whatever. And I'd have these incredibly complicated conversations and I was oblivious as to what are we talking about? Like, why I can tell you're angry, but all I did was go to the store and I came back with a soda or whatever. Like, why would you be mad about me getting a soda? And I actually remember that.
I was like, that feels very specific.
Basically, she was upset because I didn't ask her if she wanted anything. So I was going over after school. This was senior year, I'm pretty sure, because I was driving independently. And she was very upset because I didn't bring her anything. And I'm like, I can understand that. That's a bit inconsiderate. I could have called, you know what I mean? But this was pre-cell phone. Like, I would have had to go home and, right? And so in my head, I'm like, I went to the store. But why do we need to have a conversation about what I got at the store on the way here? I'm here now. If you want something, we can just go.
Which is like obviously actually about something else. There's something about you not getting that at the store.
I didn't realize.
Yeah. No, none of us do when we're that age. Yeah.
She wanted me to feel like she was a girlfriend type. She wanted to move in that direction. I didn't know that because we had been friends since we were like 7 or 8 years old.
Aww.
I didn't know. And while I was there at school, she was dating other people. I had no idea. And then she let me have it. I'm not going to use you said I can't use the word crazy. And I've learned that that's a no word. But it seemed out of nowhere and it seemed disconnected. And I'm listening for, what are you feeling? Why are you feeling like that? And that's not coming. It's, why would you go to the store? Like, if you're going to go to the store, like, you don't think I would want to go? I'm like, we didn't talk about it. Like, what are we talking about?
But I have so much empathy for her too, because you can be an incredible communicator and still when you're upset, it muddies everything. Yeah. Like, to actually know the thing you're upset about, be able to say it. To your point, not say it in a way that's, you did this thing wrong, you suck. To me even has been like a very learned skill. Like that, I think there's communicating and then there's communicating when your feelings are activated. And I think for a lot of my life, because I felt like, I guess I was a pretty good communicator, like in normal everyday life. And then
we
it
all
took some
do
people
until
going,
we learn like from those that are really good at it. Yeah.
And for someone to be like, I could tell you were upset at me, but I didn't know why. I was like shocked. I was like, but I'm a great communicator. And I was like, well, actually in that case, my feelings were over. Like I didn't know, I think this is where things like therapy help, where you just can watch yourself a bit and go like, you're yelling about this soda at the store, but like, what are you really yelling about? Take a beat. Don't talk about this right now. Like figure out what you're upset about, figure out how to express it in a non-blaming way. Like, gosh, if there's anyone under 30 who can do that, like
well, I remember
bless them and give them a podcast.
Did you ever see, I've talked about this a couple of times, but I believe her name is Megan Phelps Roper. I believe is her name. Or Michelle, maybe. So she's a young lady who was a part of the Westboro Baptist Church. She was a part of that family. So she grew up in that environment. Are you familiar with them? Okay. So she left that organization / ministry, and she talked about a lot of the things that kind of helped her learn and grow in her journey. And she gave a list. And for everybody watching, if you go back a bit in my episodes, I specifically talk about it. It's a very good list. So I think you should check it out. But one of the things that she said was to make your argument. And I kind of broadened that into make sure you say exactly what you're trying to communicate. In my experience, most people learn how to validate their point of view as you get older and as you get more intelligent, as you learn the justification for your position on something. So you go into lawyer mode, so to speak. You go into, let me make my argument, let me win this debate. Instead of firstly saying, I'm wanting, for example, for homegirl, I'm wanting you to feel, or I guess to think of me more regularly and more fondly.
Also, it sounds like she wanted you to want to date her.
Exactly.
Was she ever able to say that to you? I have to ask, like, where
years later,
where this went.
That didn't come out until I had, I can't remember if I was in LA or if I was about to move, but so that was my senior year, and I didn't leave home until I was 24. So I graduated high school. I was 17, and then I went to college for a bit, and then I worked for a good bit, and then I moved to LA. So I'm not sure, but it was many moons after high school, and we were chatting about something on Facebook, and I just called her. I hadn't talked to her in a long time. How your mama doing? What's going on? And we started talking about, the way it was and the way it could have been, all this kind of stuff. And she as a matter of fact, I think we talked about a similar conversation. I can't remember if the store actually came up, but she said, I did everything I could to let you know that I liked you, and it just never, and it had never
you
occurred to
really
me.
Didn't know?
No, I didn't know.
Do you look back at yourself and go, how did I miss all those keys? Do you feel like she wasn't clear enough?
So that's tough, because I have definitely learned the importance of being very self-aware, both positively and I guess constructively, right? You gotta leave room for the reality that you don't always notice stuff. You don't always communicate, clearly. You're not always focused on the more relevant things that would keep you in an understanding of what's happening in communication, right? So I don't want to take away self-responsibility and self-accountability, but when she said that, it was a couple of days where I'm like, I liked her when I first got to the school, and I made it clear. I was like, yo, I'm an option. And her response was, I'm open to everyone. I don't say no to anybody. Yeah. Yeah. But her point was, I have embraced my autonomy and authority to choose what I do, and I'm not ashamed of who I get down with.
Mm-hmm.
It was much more like, do you want a bone or not?
Got it.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I thought she was just communicating to me if you ever want to. And at that time in my life, I was very much like, no, first, let's see if we work.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And there's a whole path of learning that went with that. But to answer your question, I did not know that she was interested in me like that. I just thought we was real good friends.
You were like, oh, she would hook up with me, but that doesn't sound very meaningful. And like, I like her, but that doesn't seem to be on the table.
I mean,
and we'll just be friends. And
so, point being, I said to her directly, this is what I'm thinking, this I'm feeling. I'm down for us to actually try the boyfriend, girlfriend. I said it.
Mm-hmm.
But this was right after I got to the school. This was like 9th grade, something like that. We're all young.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, the relationship thing is, much more, puppy-ish or whatever.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But for me, it was, I want to focus on you. Mm-hmm. Like I caught very early on the difference between a friend and a special friend.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a positive thing for me. I never went through the I want to date multiple women phase. I didn't have that. And so, with her, I was saying, yo, we could do this. We got history. Mm-hmm. Like, before I got to the school, we knew each other. We got history. And I might need to kind of hold up on the details because I don't want any of my classmates to kind of figure this out.
This has not been shared publicly. No, it's fascinating though. And I think it's also, I feel again, like empathy on her. And I've been on every side of this type of situation too. And I also feel like people just fall for each other at different paces. And that can be really, like you very quickly were like, I'm into you, my feelings grow quickly. Do we want to do this or not? Sounds like she was at least like attracted to you, but just someone who maybe
I was friend zone.
Took longer.
I was in the friend zone.
Well, and even, now there's like, I appreciate the opening conversation around this kind of stuff. Like I even, think about now the definition of demisexual and like, what does that mean? And this idea that some
let's
people—
clear that up because I want to make sure I'm with you. What is demisexual?
Yeah.
That's a slightly new one. I've heard it.
My understanding of it, just from kind of reading about it and talking to some people who identify in that way is that someone can't feel a real physical attraction to someone or a sexual attraction until there's an emotional connection. Oh. So it's very unlikely they're going to meet someone and on day one go, I want to be your partner. Like they're just, it's going to take, and even they could hook up, of course, but like the actual real, the type of hookup that's like really great and really memorable is just not going to happen till later. Whereas there are absolutely other people who can meet someone and on that first night be super drawn to them. And these are just different paces at which people fall for each other. It's something that I actually, don't like about traditional dating. And I've always had thoughts about traditional dating, and that's a lot of what the book project was about. But also that was over 10 years ago, so the culture has shifted a lot around dating. But part of my issue with it is you're supposed to often meet someone you've never seen before, talked to. You're both sitting there. There's no space for that to grow. You are judging each other, not as humans usually, not as like, do I think this is a cool person who I like talking to and vibing with? You're like, are they a potential like romantic partner, sexual partner? Like, would I want to date them? Would I want to sleep with them? To be judged on all of that so quickly, some people thrive in that. And I feel like, especially when I lived in New York, I felt like I knew some people who just, probably would be deemed some of the bigger players that have ever lived in these cities, partially just because they were incredible at like that sort of initial interaction. So everybody was going to fall for them. But
incredible at being charming or incredible at...
Just like really good at dating.
Okay.
Like just that type of more getting to know you superficial connection, which is they were really good at it. They knew how to create warmth and connection and attraction like very fast. Did that make them a better partner than somebody who needs more time? Of course, like you never know. But to me, it's, so I just think about like that girl in 9th grade and it's like, she wasn't ready to judge you fully yet. And then by the time she was like, wait, now I know him. I've realized this special friend vibe. Like it just took me, and then you were already off living your lovely friendship life with her. Like it just, I think that putting that pressure on something that quickly. Like, I think it's why so often people fall for people who they work with or go to school with or like become friends with or share another hobby with. And often if they went on a date and they were judging in that really intense way of like, is this person partner material for me? And you have to like both match on that. It's just like the odds feel scary and crazy. But you just get to know someone over time and you realize how great they could be for you. I just think it's a bummer that in so much of life, the timing sort of weaves in and out, and that sometimes, not you didn't do this, but sometimes we put so much pressure on dating to find our partner as if like that's the main way to get there. But people are probably, I do this too, we all do this. I think people have done this to me. Like, if they don't quite fit perfectly in that initial first date, you just go, oh, I guess they're not for me. And I often think sometimes, or I try to check myself if I'm not drawn to someone in like a more casual dating setting. I go, if I like got to know them in school, at work, through friends, could I see like having a crush on them 6 months down the line? And if I could even see that, I just go, okay, like let me keep trying here. I don't know if people do that with me. Like, I feel like I'm someone who grows on people in a dating setting. So I don't like kill. And I mean, like, I do fine on first dates. I like meeting people, but the people who have really fallen for me in life, it's always been like over time, you know? So just like, it's just so funny because I feel like the experience you guys had is like, keeps going as an adult, you know, in a lot of people's settings. Just the timing goes like this, or the miscommunications, or I think that's why people love rom-com so much is you're watching these two people kind of keep missing each other and you're like, come on, just like say the thing at the right time. Like, it gets to something really like relatable and universal for all of us. And I just don't think that traditional dating culture of sit in front of someone and decide in that moment. Like, it's amazing that you felt that for her that quickly, but I totally understand why she was like, oh, I need many hours with this person till the feelings spark, you know?
That is interesting to me. Let's start there. Let's cut here. Let's cut, right? And we're going to do a part 3, traditional relationships. Cause you threw me a loop and I want to talk about it. Gumbolaya Podcast, Ep30 with Jessica Massa, everythinger, writer, producer, archaeologist, psychologist, awesomer, conversationer, all these things. Like, share, subscribe, do all those things. I don't remember to say this stuff. Like, share, subscribe. Please share this with somebody you think would enjoy it. If there's anything you hear you think would help somebody that's going through some stuff that we're talking about pain. We're talking about experience, right? So share with everybody. Catch y'all next time.
If it's my time, then it's my time. Worry about yours, cause I got mine. Cause I got mine. Worry about yours, cause I got mine. Cause I got mine. Praise and production.